The question is that this bill be now read a second time. I call the member for Heffron.
Mr Deputy Speaker, the opposition opposes the legislation for the reasons articulated by the member for Kira, and that is by allocating the cost basis of smart meters to the electricity customers. And it does it on the basis that any increased additional cost to those engaged in supplying renewable energy to their household is in fact a deterrent. In fact, governments, through not just the solar bonus scheme, but through every other area of renewable energy, has been encouraging the energy industry to move towards renewable energy. And the cost of some renewables is one of the chief arguments by those opposed, for example, to the use of wind as an area of which basically renewable energy should not be pursued. Now, it was a very fortuitous and far-reaching, thoughtful energy minister who first introduced the solar bonus scheme. And that was the member for Blacktown when he was energy minister.
How much did it blow out by?
The policy that
1.7 billion.
The policy that he announced was also embraced by the then opposition leader Barry O'Farrell, and it was virtually a unanimous decision of this parliament. Nobody in this parliament opposed it at the time. And that solar bonus scheme had the instant effect by generating a plethora of solar installations, and had the impact of encouraging mammoth amounts of people to look to renewable energy, to such an extent that the manufacturing price completely lowered, and all of a sudden it became an affordable scheme on the basis of the solar bonus scheme. So those who want to complain about the fact that the minister subsequent to the minister for Blacktown didn't pull it in, obviously was looking at the popularity of the scheme and looking at the plethora of rooftop solars that were being installed. And all of us know that renewable energy would not take place without there being some form of public subsidy, and in fact it is the private sector and the jobs that industry generate that is going to be a substantial part of the future of Australia and New South Wales and its economy. Now the movement of retail and transmission and distribution to the private sector is going to result in a whole heap of pressure and legislation upon whoever the government of the day is to provide some mechanism to on-go and charge the consumer of electricity. And it is not fair. Now, there's no point the member for Kiama interjecting and say it's the market, because where a market genuinely works, consumers get the benefit of that competition. But perhaps the member for Kiama, as he's interjecting, can tell me where there exists a genuine market that doesn't require antitrust legislation or trade practices legislation to regulate it. Now, I do have to confess that the market in terms of the manufacture of electricity, the generation of electricity, has been substantially under control because of the national energy market, a market established by the Keating government, and the advent and the subsidy of renewable energies, particularly rooftop solar, has reduced the demand for the manufacture of electricity, and those market prices have been relatively stable for a lengthy period of time. The gouging from ordinary householders in terms of electricity prices has simply been that state treasuries, particularly in New South Wales, have been gouging $2 billion a year, called tax equivalent payments, dividends, loan facility fees, which have effectively been an electricity tax on the people of New South Wales. So we have effectively, the government has effectively sold off its transmission and distribution network to the private sector, which effectively was a taxing organisation to generate revenue for the Treasury. And on top of that, the private sector are going to pass on to those people who are engaged in the feed-in tariff a further responsibility of paying for a smart meter that they don't even need. Now, there is going to be a huge transition in the next 5 to 10 years, if not less than that, in respect of rooftop solar. We are already having those businesses engaged in transmission and distribution networks asserting those people who are moving to renewable energy, they're calling them free riders. And they're trying to already at this point in time gouge increased electricity prices out of them from the transmission and distribution networks because there is a major technology going to come, and that's going to relate to energy storage or battery storage, because as soon as that it becomes economic to install, the technology will allow solar energy to be stored in households or in particular regions. There is going to be a complete transition to this particular this particular industry. And it's a wonder through the debates that we had on the sale of the transmission and distribution networks that the government didn't indicate that it had one argument in its favour, and it never referred to it, which indicates obviously lack of competence, and that is that they could have argued that it was an ideal time to sell the transmission and distribution network, and that was once the storage facilities of rooftop solar become available, you're then going to be in a situation that the value of your transmission and distribution network, the value is going to fall to a huge extent. So there is going to be a huge transition over the next 5 years that relates to energy storage, and to facilitate that, I would imagine that there'll be a responsibility on governments to add some sort of subsidy to make that change. But I can tell you this, and I flag with the House this now: the minute the technology and the cost become within reach, there will be demands made, probably by those like me who favour renewable energy, for assistance to be provided by government to effect the transition, and the transition and distribution networks and the retailers are going to be screaming to try and stop any form of subsidy. It is not in the interests of the transmission and distribution networks, and it is not in the interest of the retailers in the future for renewable energy to be, it's not in their financial economic interest for renewable energy to be freely available and stored to average householders in the state, because it directly impacts upon their future revenue supplies. So we need to be aware of that. And this bill that contains a part of it contains a provision that the cost of smart meters is actually to be borne by those electricity customers is just an example of the sort of pressure whoever the government of the day is going to be in respect of this industry. But mark my words, there will be over the next 5 years a huge transition in respect of in respect to the energy supply sector, and governments, state governments and the Commonwealth government have to be informed and uniquely placed to be able to ensure that never again are the consumers and householders of this state gouged by revenue-hungry owners as they were gouged by revenue-hungry Treasury in the past.